Captain Lee Daeho stood on the bridge of his battleship, watching the stars through the massive window. The ship was called Incheon's Pride, and it was one of the best ships in the human fleet. For 300 years, humans had traveled among the stars, building colonies on distant worlds. They thought they were alone in the galaxy. They were wrong. The alarm began to ring. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Officer after officer called out reports that made no sense. Ships were appearing above every human world at the same time. Massive ships, bigger than anything humans had ever built. "Captain," said Lieutenant Choi Min-ah, her voice tight with fear. "We're getting reports from Earth, from New Seoul, from all our colonies. There are alien ships everywhere." Daeho felt his stomach drop. He had trained for many things, but not this. No human had ever seen aliens before. Now they were here and they had come in force. "Show me," he said. The main screen filled with an image that would haunt humanity forever. A ship hung in space above Earth. It was black as night and shaped like a dagger. It was so large that it blocked out the sun over entire continents. Next to it, human ships looked like insects. Dr. Park So-jin ran onto the bridge. She was the ship's science officer, a woman who studied life on other worlds. She had always dreamed of meeting aliens. Now that dream had become a nightmare. "They're sending a message," she said, her hands shaking as she worked at her computer. "It's being broadcast to every human world at once." The screen changed. An alien face appeared. It was tall and thin, with gray skin and black eyes that seemed to look into their souls. When it spoke, its voice was cold and without emotion. "I am Overlord Commander Vekshan of the Kethmori Empire. Your species will submit to our rule. You will become servants of the Empire. You have one day to surrender all your weapons and accept our control. If you refuse, you will be destroyed." The message ended. The bridge was silent. Then Admiral Kim Tae-sung's voice came through the radio from Earth. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. We will not surrender. We will fight." What happened next showed the aliens how little they understood humans. The moon exploded. One shot from the alien flagship turned humanity's oldest companion into dust and rock. The pieces fell to Earth like burning rain, but instead of surrendering, something else happened. Every human ship in the galaxy turned toward the alien fleets. Every colony began preparing for war. The aliens had expected fear and submission. Instead, they got defiance. "They destroyed the moon," whispered Mina. "How can we fight something that powerful?" Daeho looked at his crew. They were afraid, but they were also angry. That was what the aliens didn't understand about humans. Fear didn't make them weak. It made them dangerous. "We can't match their power," Daeho said. "So we won't try to. We'll fight the way humans always fight. We'll be smarter, faster, and we'll never give up." The alien ships began moving toward human worlds. They moved in perfect formation, like they were dancing to music only they could hear. Their tactics were flawless, their technology beyond anything humans had dreamed of. But Daeho noticed something. They always did the same thing. When human ships attacked from the left, the aliens always moved right. When humans attacked from above, aliens always moved down. They were predictable. "Mina," he said, "take your fighter squadron and attack their left flank. But when they move to defend, don't pull back. Keep going straight." "Sir, that's suicide," she said. "Maybe. But they won't expect it. No sane species would do something that crazy." Mina smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Good thing we're not sane." The battle began. Human ships were destroyed by the dozens, but for every human ship that died, it took a piece of an alien ship with it. The aliens had expected a quick victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to die quietly. Daeho's plan worked. When Minah's fighters kept charging instead of retreating, the alien computers couldn't understand what was happening. The fighters broke through the alien formation and damaged their command ship. On the alien flagship, Overlord Commander Vekshan watched the battle with growing confusion. In 50,000 years of conquest, no species had ever fought like this. They were supposed to calculate their chances, realize they couldn't win, and surrender. That was how intelligent species behaved. These humans were different. They kept fighting even when they knew they would die. It made no sense. Dr. So-jin was working frantically at her station. She was studying the alien ships, looking for weaknesses. What she found was even more important. "Captain," she said, "I'm reading their communications. They're not just talking to each other. They're all connected, like parts of one big mind. That's why they move so perfectly together." "Is that good or bad for us?" asked Daeho. "Both," So-jin said. It makes them incredibly organized. But it also means they can't understand why we fight as individuals. To them, every human ship should act exactly like every other human ship. When we don't, it confuses them. The battle raged for hours. The aliens were winning, but not as quickly as they expected. Every human victory, no matter how small, was broadcast to other human fleets. The message was clear. The aliens could be hurt. As the fight continued, something else happened. Pieces of destroyed alien ships drifted through space. Human salvage teams risked everything to collect them. If humanity was going to survive, they needed to learn alien technology. Engineer Yoon Jae-min was waiting when the first alien parts arrived at the human research station. He was young but brilliant, the kind of person who could look at alien technology and understand it. His job was to figure out how alien weapons worked and then make them better. "This metal," he said, studying a piece of alien armor, "it's not just strong. It's smart. It changes its structure based on what's hitting it." But humans were smart too. If the aliens could make armor that adapted, humans could make weapons that adapted faster. The first day of the war ended with humanity still alive. That was more than the aliens had expected. Overlord Commander Vekshan sent a message to his superiors. "The humans resist more strongly than anticipated," he reported. "They fight without logic. They sacrifice themselves for no gain. They do not behave like intelligent species." The response came quickly. "Then treat them like animals. Destroy them all." But even as he received those orders, Vekshan wondered if there was something his empire didn't understand about these strange creatures called humans. They had just destroyed the moon to prove their power. The humans had seen that power and chosen to fight anyway. What kind of species chose certain death over slavery? On Earth, Admiral Kim Taesung was asking himself the same question from the other side. He stood in the command center, watching reports come in from across human space. The aliens were stronger than anything humanity had ever faced. Logic said they should surrender, but humans had never been slaves to logic. They were slaves to something else, the idea that freedom was worth dying for. "Sir," said an aide, "we're getting volunteer reports from every world. Everyone wants to fight." Kim nodded. He had expected as much. Humans were stubborn that way. When someone told them they couldn't do something, they did it anyway. When someone said they had to surrender, they fought harder. The war had begun. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. But they had something the aliens didn't understand: the absolute refusal to kneel. In the depths of space, more alien fleets were moving toward human worlds. The Kethmori Empire had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to live. They would use their full power to wipe out every human in the galaxy. They had no idea what they had just started. 3 weeks after the aliens arrived, the war had spread across the galaxy. The Kethmori Empire sent more ships to human space every day. They expected the fighting to be over quickly. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a kind of war they had never seen before. Overlord Commander Vekshan stood in his command chamber staring at reports that made no sense. His fleet had destroyed dozens of human ships, but more kept appearing. When humans lost a battle, they didn't retreat and regroup like sensible species. They attacked again immediately, using different tactics each time. "Report," he ordered his tactical officer. "The humans have engaged us in 17 separate actions in the last day," the officer said. "They attack in small groups, strike quickly, and disappear before we can respond properly. Our computers cannot predict their next move because their actions follow no logical pattern." Vekshan's gray skin darkened with frustration. The Empire had conquered thousands of species over 50,000 years. They had rules for how war worked. Smaller forces retreated when faced with larger ones. Weaker species surrendered when they realized they couldn't win. These were the laws of intelligent behavior. Humans seemed to have never heard of these laws. On the human research station, engineer Yoon Jae-min was working without sleep. Around him, teams of human scientists studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had 3 weeks to learn what had taken the aliens thousands of years to develop. "I figured out their shields," Jae-min announced to the research team. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but his mind was sharp. "They create a field that stops energy weapons and deflects projectiles. But look at this." He showed them his work on a computer screen. "Their shields are perfect against normal attacks. But what if we don't attack normally?" Dr. Park So-jin looked over his shoulder. She had been transferred to the research station after studying alien communications during the first battle. What do you mean? Their shields expect weapons to behave in certain ways, Jamin explained. Energy weapons fire in straight lines. Missiles follow predictable paths. But what if we make weapons that don't do what they're supposed to do? Sojin understood immediately. Weapons that think for themselves. Weapons that change their behavior based on what the shields are doing. Exactly. And I think I can build them. While the scientists worked, the war continued. Commander Shin Hee-wan led a special team of human soldiers whose job was to board alien ships. It was the most dangerous work in the war, but also the most important. The only way to learn alien secrets was to take them by force. Remember, Hye-wan told her team as they prepared for another mission, the aliens are stronger and faster than us. Their weapons are better, but they've never fought anyone who refuses to surrender. Who's that? The target was a large alien transport ship. Human sensors showed it was carrying important cargo, possibly new weapons or technology. Hee-wan's team flew their small ship close to the alien vessel, using stealth technology reverse-engineered from captured alien parts. They cut through the alien hull and entered the ship. Inside, they found corridors that were too tall for humans, filled with strange air that burned their lungs. But they also found something unexpected. The aliens inside the ship were afraid. They're running, said one of Hye-wan's soldiers in amazement. The aliens are actually running from us, it was true. The Kethmori crew was retreating deeper into their own ship, rather than fighting the human boarders. They had weapons that could have easily killed the humans, but they weren't using them effectively. Hye-wan realized why. The aliens had never fought anyone who was willing to die. In their empire, battles were won through superior force or technology. The weaker side always surrendered before taking serious losses. The idea of fighting to the death was completely foreign to them. But for humans, it was natural. The boarding team captured the ship and found cargo that changed the war. The aliens were carrying new types of weapons specifically designed to fight humans. But now those weapons belonged to humanity. Lieutenant Choi Minna had survived the first battle and many others since then. She was now one of the best human pilots in the fleet, with a reputation for doing impossible things. Her fighter squadron had been attacking alien ships for weeks, always outnumbered, always outgunned. Today's mission is special, Captain Lee Dae-ho told her before the latest battle. We've learned that the alien fleet has a new commander, someone very important. If we can take him out, it might slow down their whole operation. Minna nodded. She understood what he wasn't saying. It was a suicide mission. The alien command ship was protected by dozens of other vessels. Getting close enough to attack it meant flying through a storm of enemy fire. I'll need a clear shot, she said. Can you give me that? We'll give you everything we have, Dae-ho promised. The battle began like all the others. Human ships darted between the massive alien vessels, striking quickly and moving before the aliens could respond. But this time was different. This time, the humans weren't trying to win the battle. They were trying to create one perfect moment. Minna waited for her chance. Around her, human ships were being destroyed, but each loss drew the alien defenders away from their command ship. The aliens were winning the battle, but they were making a mistake. They were spreading their forces thin to chase down individual human ships. Now, Dae-ho's voice crackled over the radio. All ships, cover Minna's run. She dove toward the alien command ship. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around her. Her fighters' shields failed. Her engines were damaged, but she kept flying. The aliens finally understood what was happening. Every ship in their fleet turned to stop her. But it was too late. Minna's fighter was too small and moving too fast for their big guns to hit. She crashed through the command ship's bridge. The explosion destroyed both her fighter and the alien control center. In that moment, the most important alien commander in the sector died, along with the human pilot who killed him. The psychological impact on the aliens was enormous. For the first time in their history, they had seen an enemy choose death over defeat. It wasn't just the tactical loss that hurt them. It was the proof that humans were fundamentally different from every other species they had conquered. Overlord Commander Vek Shan received reports of the attack with growing alarm. His superiors in the Empire were beginning to ask questions. How had a primitive species managed to kill a fleet commander? Why was the war taking so long? These humans, he reported to the Empire's leadership, they do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas we do not understand. When they lose, they become more dangerous, not less. When we kill them, others take their place immediately. The response from the Empire was predictable. Use more force. Destroy their worlds until they surrender. But Vexan was beginning to doubt whether surrender was something humans were capable of. In every battle, they had shown the same pattern. When faced with impossible odds, they fought harder. When offered the chance to retreat, they attacked instead. On Earth, Admiral Kim Tae-sung was planning the next phase of human resistance. The aliens controlled more star systems now, but they were paying a heavy price for each victory. Human colonies that fell continued to resist. Human fleets that were destroyed somehow reformed and attacked again. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're getting strange signals from some of the alien-occupied worlds. It looks like other species are starting to rebel." Kim allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had made a mistake. By bringing humans into their empire by force, they had introduced something new, the idea that the empire could be resisted. Other species were watching the war and seeing something they had never seen before. The mighty Kethmori Empire was bleeding. Ships that had seemed invincible were being destroyed by primitive humans who refused to accept defeat. If humans could fight the Empire, maybe they could too. Engineer Jamin's new weapons were ready. They were based on alien technology, but improved with human creativity. The weapons could change their behavior in mid-flight, adapting to alien defenses faster than the aliens could adapt to them. "Test them," Admiral Kim ordered. The first battle using the new weapons was a shock to both sides. Human missiles that should have been stopped by alien shields somehow got through. Energy beams that the aliens deflected kept changing direction until they found targets. For the first time since the war began, humans weren't just surviving alien attacks. They were winning battles. The war was about to change. The Kethmori Empire had expected to conquer humanity in days. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that got stronger with each defeat, more creative with each challenge, and more determined with each loss. They were learning what every human already knew. There was no force in the universe more dangerous than someone with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. 6 months into the war, the Kethmori Empire controlled 12 human worlds. They expected these conquests to be the end of human resistance in those systems. Instead, they found that occupying human territory was like trying to hold water in their hands. Captain O. Sung-ho crouched behind the ruins of what used to be a shopping center on New Busan. The aliens had conquered his world 3 months ago, but they still didn't control it. Every day, human resistance fighters struck at alien patrols, supply lines, and communication centers. "How many do we have today?" he asked his second-in-command, a woman named Lee Ji-won who had been a teacher before the war. 43 fighters in this sector," she whispered back, "but the aliens brought in more troops yesterday. They're getting frustrated." Sung-ho smiled grimly. Frustration was good. Frustrated enemies made mistakes. The aliens were used to species that surrendered quickly and stayed surrendered. They had never dealt with humans who treated occupation as just another kind of battle. "What's our target?" he asked. "Supply depot, 2 kilometers south. They're storing energy cells there, probably for their weapons. If we can destroy it, their patrols in this area will be weakened for days." The plan was simple, like all the best human plans. A small team would sneak close to the depot while the rest of the fighters created a distraction elsewhere. The aliens would send forces to deal with the distraction, leaving the depot lightly guarded. It was the kind of tactic that drove the aliens crazy. They had sophisticated battle plans and perfect coordination. Humans had improvisation and the willingness to try anything. The attack went perfectly. While alien forces chased shadows across the city, Sung-ho's team destroyed enough supplies to cripple alien operations for a week. But more importantly, they broadcast the attack to other resistance cells across the planet. The message was clear: the aliens were not invincible. Dr. Lim Yunbi was studying the war from a different angle. As a psychologist, she was trying to understand how the aliens thought. What she discovered was more valuable than any weapon. "They're not individuals the way we are," she explained to Admiral Kim over a secure communication link. "Every alien in their empire thinks the same way. They share information instantly, make decisions as a group, and never disagree with each other." "That sounds like an advantage," Kim said. "It is until they meet us," Yunbi replied. "They can't understand why humans act differently from each other. When one human ship attacks from the left and another attacks from the right at the same time, their shared mind tries to process both actions as part of one plan. But there is no plan. Each human captain is just doing what seems best to them. She paused, then continued. But I've discovered something else. Their shared mind means they all feel the same emotions. When one alien becomes afraid, they all become afraid. When one doubts their victory, they all doubt. Admiral Kim understood immediately. Psychological warfare. Exactly. We need to make them afraid. Not just of losing battles, but of the idea that they might not win the war. The human military began a new kind of attack. Instead of just fighting alien ships, they started broadcasting messages throughout alien-controlled space. The messages showed human resistance fighters still fighting on conquered worlds. They showed human ships appearing in systems the aliens thought they controlled. They showed humans who preferred death to surrender. For species in the Kethmori Empire who had never seen such things, the broadcasts were shocking. For the aliens themselves, they were terrifying. Overlord Prime Zethrak was the supreme military commander of the Empire. He had conquered more worlds than any other alien in history. He had never faced defeat in 1,000 years of warfare. Now he was studying reports about humans that made no sense. Explain this, he ordered his intelligence officer. How can a species with inferior technology continue to resist for so long? They do not follow standard behavioral patterns, the officer replied. When faced with superior force, they adapt instead of surrendering. When their worlds are conquered, they continue fighting instead of accepting new leadership. When offered reasonable terms, they refuse instead of negotiating. Zethrak had ruled the Empire for centuries. He understood power, strategy, and the logic of war. But humans seem to operate by different rules entirely. What do they want? He asked. Freedom, the officer said simply. That is not logical. Freedom is an abstract concept. It cannot be eaten, used as shelter, or traded for resources. Why would they die for something that has no practical value? The officer had no answer. Neither did anyone else in the Empire. While the aliens struggled to understand human psychology, humans were learning to exploit alien weaknesses. Engineer Yoon Jaemin had moved beyond copying alien technology. Now he was improving it in ways the aliens couldn't predict. Their computers are incredibly advanced, he explained to a gathering of human scientists. But they're also predictable. They always choose the most efficient solution to any problem. So we build weapons that have no efficient counter. His latest creation was a missile that split into dozens of smaller missiles when attacked. Each smaller missile could split again if threatened. The alien defense computers couldn't calculate an efficient way to stop something that multiplied when attacked. It's like fighting our own stubbornness, Jaemin said with satisfaction. The harder they try to stop it, the more dangerous it becomes. The Battle of New Sol System proved that human resistance was becoming something more than desperate survival. Admiral Kim had assembled the largest human fleet since the war began. His target was the alien fleet occupying humanity's second most important colony. The aliens had 3 times as many ships, but Kim had advantages they couldn't match. His captains didn't need orders to coordinate their attacks. They could see what needed to be done and do it, without waiting for permission or checking with higher command. Captain Lee Dae-ho led the attack in his battleship Incheon's Pride. Around him, dozens of human ships moved in patterns that looked random to alien sensors, but were actually perfectly coordinated. Each captain was responding to the situation as they saw it, making decisions based on their own judgment. The aliens tried to counter by predicting human movements, but there was no pattern to predict. When human ships should have retreated, they advanced. When they should have formed defensive lines, they scattered and regrouped somewhere else. Their tactics make no sense, reported the alien fleet commander. They sacrifice tactical advantage for strategic confusion. They accept losses that gain them nothing. But the losses did gain them something. Every human ship that died took down alien ships with it. Every sacrifice weakened the alien fleet and strengthened human resolve. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it ended, the alien fleet was destroyed and New Sol was free. But more importantly, the victory was broadcast across the galaxy. Other species under alien rule watched in amazement as humans celebrated their impossible victory. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Kethmori Empire had lost a major battle to a species they considered primitive. The psychological impact was enormous. On worlds throughout the Empire, other species began to whisper about the humans who refused to surrender. They began to remember what freedom felt like. On the planet Cathara, a species called the Veltar received the human broadcasts in secret. They had been slaves to the Empire for 2,000 years. Their leaders met in hidden caves to discuss something that had been unthinkable before: rebellion. "The humans show us it is possible," said their eldest leader. "If they can fight the Empire, perhaps we can as well." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. The Empire had maintained control through the belief that resistance was hopeless. Humans had shattered that belief simply by refusing to accept it. Dr. Park So-jin was now coordinating human intelligence efforts across multiple star systems. She had become an expert on alien psychology. But more importantly, she had become an expert on human psychology. "We're changing," she reported to Admiral Kim. "Not just our technology or our tactics, we're becoming something new. 6 months ago, we were explorers and colonists who had never seen real war. Now we're something the galaxy has never seen before." "What's that?" Kim asked. "A species that gets stronger when attacked. Every alien assault makes us more determined. Every loss teaches us new lessons. Every victory proves that the impossible is just something we haven't done yet." The war was entering a new phase. What had started as conquest was becoming something the Empire had never faced: a galaxy-wide inspiration. Humans weren't just fighting for their own freedom anymore. They were fighting for the freedom of every species under alien rule. The Kethmori Empire was about to learn that some ideas were more powerful than any weapon. The idea of freedom, once released, could not be contained, and humans had just released it across the entire galaxy. 1 year after the war began, the galaxy was burning. The Kethmori Empire, which had ruled unopposed for 50,000 years, faced rebellions on dozens of worlds. The spark that started this fire was humanity's refusal to surrender. Ambassador Han Kyung-soo stood before a gathering of alien leaders on the hidden world of Nexus Prime. These beings represented 15 different species, all united by one thing: they were tired of being slaves. "The Empire calls us primitive," Kyung-soo said in the universal language the aliens had forced all their subjects to learn. "They say we cannot govern ourselves. They claim we need their guidance to survive. But look around you. We have survived. We have thrived. And now we are free," the assembled aliens murmured among themselves. The Veltar delegation whispered in their musical language. The rock-like Stendari communicated through color changes in their skin. The aquatic Merhai spoke in ultrasonic tones that required translators. All of them had one thing in common. They had seen humans fight impossible odds and win. "What do the humans offer us?" asked the Veltar leader, a being whose people had been enslaved for 2,000 years. "We offer you nothing," Kyung-soo replied. "Freedom is not something we can give you. It is something you must take for yourselves. But we will fight beside you. We will share our knowledge, and we will never surrender no matter how dark things become." The Stendari representative, a creature that looked like living stone, rumbled in their deep voice. "Your species fights strangely. Our military advisors have studied your tactics. You sacrifice efficiency for unpredictability. You choose dangerous paths when safe ones exist. This is not logical," Kyung-soo smiled. "Logic is a tool. Freedom is a principle. Sometimes principles are more important than tools." Colonel Bae Yu-jin was teaching alien fighters how to think like humans. It was harder than teaching them to use human weapons. For species that had lived under Empire rule for thousands of years, the concept of individual initiative was foreign. "Stop waiting for orders," she told a group of Veltar fighters. "The Empire's strength comes from their perfect coordination, but it's also their weakness. When you act individually, when you make your own decisions, they can't predict what you'll do." One of the Veltar, a young female named Siltha, raised her hand. "But what if we make wrong decisions? What if our actions harm the mission? Then you'll learn from those mistakes and do better next time," Yu-jin replied. "The Empire never makes mistakes because they never try anything new. But they also never improve. Humans make mistakes all the time. That's how we get stronger." The training was working. Alien resistance groups that had been fighting the Empire for decades were suddenly winning battles they couldn't win before. They were using human tactics, hit-and-run attacks, improvised weapons, and most importantly, the refusal to accept defeat. On the world of Cathara, the Veltar rebellion had grown from a few hundred fighters to a full-scale revolution. They struck at alien supply lines, destroyed communication centers, and rescued prisoners from Empire labor camps. The Kethmori garrison commander sent increasingly desperate reports to his superiors. The native population has adopted human fighting methods. They attack without warning, retreat before we can respond, and reappear somewhere else. Our casualties are mounting. The response from Empire Command was always the same. Use more force. But force was no longer working. For every rebel the aliens killed, 2 more joined the resistance. The Empire was learning that fear was only effective against people who wanted to stay alive, more than they wanted to be free. Humans had taught the galaxy a new lesson. Some things were worth dying for. Dr. Park So-jin was now coordinating intelligence across multiple species. Her small team on the research station had grown into a galaxy-wide network of rebels, scientists, and freedom fighters. The Empire is making a strategic error, she reported to the Joint Human-Alien Command. They're treating each rebellion as a separate problem. They don't understand that we're all connected now. When they crush a rebellion on one world, they create martyrs that inspire fighters on 10 other worlds. Admiral Kim studied the galactic map. Red dots showed Empire-controlled systems. Blue dots showed free worlds. Green dots showed systems in rebellion. 6 months ago, the map had been almost entirely red. Now it was a patchwork of colors. How many species are actively fighting? He asked. 43, So-jin replied. And more are joining every day. The Empire is fighting on hundreds of fronts simultaneously. Their resources are stretched thin. But they're still stronger than all of us combined, Kim pointed out. In terms of raw power, yes. But they're fighting the wrong kind of war. They're trying to hold territory and control populations. We're fighting for ideas. Ideas don't stay conquered. The war's turning point came at the Battle of Nexus Gate. This was a crucial hyperspace junction that connected the northern and southern halves of the Empire. If the rebels could control it, they could cut the Empire in half. Captain Lee Dae-ho commanded the largest rebel fleet ever assembled. Ships from a dozen species flew beside human vessels. Each species brought their own strengths to the battle. The Veltar ships were fast and maneuverable. The Stendari vessels were slow but incredibly tough. The Merhai brought ships that could fight underwater on ocean worlds. Together, they formed a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Remember, Dae-ho broadcast to the fleet, we're not just fighting for our own freedom today. We're fighting for every species still enslaved by the Empire. Every battle won here means hope for millions of beings across the galaxy. The alien defenders at Nexus Gate were led by Overlord Prime Zethrak himself. He had brought the Empire's most powerful fleet to hold this crucial system. His ships outnumbered the rebels 3-1, but numbers weren't everything. The battle began with the rebels doing something the Empire never expected. They split up. Instead of concentrating their forces for a single massive attack, they divided into dozens of small groups that attacked from every direction at once. Zethrak's computers couldn't process so many simultaneous threats. His perfect formations began to break apart as his ships tried to respond to attacks coming from everywhere at once. This is chaos, his tactical officer reported. They have no central command, no unified strategy. How can we counter tactics that have no logic? We cannot, Zethrak realized with growing horror. They are not fighting one battle. They are fighting 1,000 small battles, each one different from the others. The humans led the charge, but they were no longer alone. Veltar ships darted between enemy formations like deadly dancers. Stendari vessels smashed through alien lines like moving mountains. Merhai ships struck from unexpected angles, their crews thinking in 3 dimensions instead of 2. Captain Dae-ho found himself face to face with Zethrak's flagship. The alien ship was massive, armed with weapons that could destroy planets. His own ship was damaged, his crew exhausted. Sir, his weapons officer reported, we can't penetrate their shields. We need to retreat. Dae-ho looked at the alien ship and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The destroyed moon, the conquered worlds, the billions of beings living in slavery. No, he said quietly. We end this here. He ordered his ship to ram the alien flagship. It was suicide, but it was also victory. The collision destroyed both ships, but it also killed the Empire's greatest military commander. The psychological impact was devastating. Across the Empire, the news spread that Overlord Prime Zethrak was dead, killed by a human who chose death over defeat. For species that had never imagined the Empire could be beaten, it was proof that the impossible was happening. The Battle of Nexus Gate ended in rebel victory. The Empire was cut in half, its northern and southern fleets unable to support each other. But more importantly, the victory proved that united, The enslaved species of the galaxy were stronger than their masters. Ambassador Kyung-Soo stood again before the alien leaders, but this time there were representatives from 50 species instead of 15. "The Empire is weakening," he announced. "Their fleets are scattered, their worlds in rebellion. But we cannot become complacent. The hardest battles are still ahead." A new voice spoke up. It belonged to Nexthara, the first member of a species called the Zintari, to openly join the rebellion. Her people were telepathic, able to communicate instantly across vast distances. "My people offer our abilities to the cause," she said. "We can coordinate resistance efforts across the galaxy. Without using communications the Empire can intercept." Other species offered their own unique abilities. The war was becoming something the Empire had never faced, a truly united galaxy fighting for freedom. Colonel Yujin was training new alien recruits every day. They came from species the Empire had scattered across different worlds to prevent rebellion. Now those same species were working together, sharing knowledge and tactics. "You're not just learning to fight," she told them. "You're learning to be free. Freedom isn't something you win in battle and then keep forever. It's something you have to choose every day, something you have to defend with your life." The recruits nodded. They understood. They had seen what humans would sacrifice for freedom. Now they were ready to make the same sacrifices. The war was changing. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become a galaxy-wide revolution. The Empire still controlled thousands of worlds 3 years after first contact. The Kethmori Empire was dying. Their homeworld of Kethmor, unconquered for 100,000 years, was under siege. Around the ancient planet, the largest fleet in galactic history had gathered. Admiral Park Seo-jin stood on the bridge of the flagship New Earth, watching the enemy world through the main viewer. She had come far from her days as a science officer studying alien biology. Now she commanded ships from 80 different species, all united by humanity's gift to the galaxy. The idea that freedom was worth any sacrifice. "Report from all sectors," she ordered. The responses came in dozens of languages, translated instantly by the communication systems humans had helped design. Veltar ships reported from the north. Stendari vessels held the southern approach. Mare-High forces controlled the ocean side of the planet. Human ships were scattered throughout the formation, not as leaders but as equals among equals. "They're not coming out to fight," reported Captain Oh Sung-ho, who had led resistance fighters for 3 years and now commanded a battle group. "The Empire is making their final stand on the surface." Seo-jin nodded. She had expected this. The Kethmori had never learned to retreat because they had never needed to. Now faced with their first real defeat in 50,000 years, they were doing the only thing they knew how to do: fight to the death in their strongest fortress. "What are our chances?" asked General Choi Jin-woo, the human military commander planning the ground assault. "Unknown," Seo-jin replied honestly. "No one has ever attacked Kethmor before, but that's what makes us dangerous. We specialize in doing things that have never been done before." The last emperor of the Kethmori Empire stood in his crystal palace, watching the alien fleet through windows that had never shown him anything but victory. He was older than human civilization, a being who had ruled the galaxy when Earth's ancestors were still learning to make fire. His name was Vashitar the Eternal, and he was about to become the first emperor in his species' history to face defeat. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his remaining advisors. "More than we can count," replied his intelligence chief. "They come from every world we once ruled. Species we scattered to prevent them from uniting have somehow found each other and joined together. How is this possible?" "The humans, my emperor. They created something we never expected: hope. They showed other species that the Empire could be resisted. More than that, they showed them how to resist." Vashtar had studied the human species since the war began. He understood now why they had been so dangerous. They didn't fight for resources or territory. They fought for ideas that were more powerful than any weapon. "What do they want from us?" he asked. "Surrender, my emperor. Complete surrender. They demand the dissolution of the Empire and freedom for all enslaved species. And if we refuse, they will destroy us. Not just our military, but our entire civilization. They have learned to fight the way we never could, without mercy for those who enslave others." The final battle began at dawn on Kethmor. The planet's surface was protected by shields that had never been broken, defended by weapons that had conquered the galaxy. But the attacking force had something the Empire had never faced: absolute determination. Human ships led the first wave, not because they were strongest, but because they were most willing to die. They crashed through the planetary shields like hammers, accepting destruction to create gaps for other ships to follow. Behind them came the Veltar, their fast ships darting through the openings the humans had made. Then the Stendari, their heavy vessels smashing through remaining defenses. Then dozens of other species, each fighting in their own way, but all fighting for the same thing. General Jin Wu led the ground assault personally. He was 60 years old now, a veteran of 100 battles who had learned to fight alongside aliens who had once been impossible to imagine. His forces landed on Kethmore in 1,000 different places, making it impossible for the defenders to concentrate their resistance. Remember, he broadcast to all forces, "We're not here for revenge. We're here for justice. The Empire dies today, but we don't become the Empire. We build something better." The fighting was brutal. The Kethmori defended their homeworld with weapons that could level mountains, but for every rebel who fell, 10 more took their place. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years fought side by side, united by their shared desire for freedom. In the Crystal Palace, the last emperor watched his empire crumble. His forces were brave, but they were fighting an enemy that had learned something his people never understood: that some things were more important than survival. "My emperor," his advisor said quietly, "perhaps it is time to consider surrender." Vashtar turned from the window. He was ancient, powerful, and proud, but he was also wise enough to recognize defeat when it came. "No," he said, "it is time to consider something else. It is time to consider that we were wrong." The words were harder to say than anything he had ever spoken. For 100,000 years, his people had believed they were bringing order to a chaotic galaxy. They had convinced themselves that other species needed to be ruled because they couldn't rule themselves. But the rebels had proven them wrong. Not just humans, but dozens of species working together, creating something the Empire had never been able to build: a galaxy where different peoples could be free and still cooperate. The Crystal Palace shook as rebel forces reached the capital city. The Emperor could hear the sounds of battle getting closer. Soon, the rebels would reach him. He made a decision that surprised even himself. Admiral So Jin was leading her personal guard through the palace corridors when they found something unexpected. The last emperor sat alone on his crystal throne, his weapons laid aside, waiting for them. "I surrender," he said simply. So Jin approached carefully. This could be a trap, but when she looked into the ancient alien's eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected: understanding. "You could have fought to the end," she said. "Yes," Vashatar replied, "but that would have solved nothing. I have watched your species for 3 years. I have seen what you can accomplish. I have seen species I thought were primitive create wonders I never imagined." He stood from his throne, moving slowly but with dignity. "I am the last emperor of the Kethmori Empire. With my surrender, the empire dies. But perhaps something better can be born from its ashes." The war was over. Across the galaxy, the news spread at the speed of light. The empire had fallen. The species that had ruled for 50,000 years had been defeated by people who refused to be slaves. But the rebels didn't celebrate with conquest. Instead, they gathered on Kethmore for a different kind of ceremony. President Jang Mi-young had been elected to lead the new government that would replace the empire. She was a human, but she represented all the free species of the galaxy. Her first official act was to address the assembled beings who had won their freedom. "Today marks the end of the last empire," she said, speaking from the steps of the former imperial palace. "But it also marks the beginning of the first true federation. We gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals." The crowd included humans and Veltar, Stendari and Merhai, and dozens of other species. For the first time in galactic history, they were all free to choose their own paths. "The Empire ruled through fear," Mi-young continued. "We will govern through cooperation. The Empire demanded submission. We offer partnership. The Empire enslaved the different. We celebrate diversity." Former Emperor Vashatar watched from the crowd. He had expected to be executed, but the rebels had done something else unexpected. They had offered him the chance to help build what came next. "Why?" He had asked Admiral So Jin. "Why spare the one who enslaved your galaxy?" Because, she had replied, freedom means the freedom to change, even for emperors. The new Galactic Federation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of one species ruling all others, representatives from every world had an equal voice. Instead of uniformity enforced by law, diversity was protected by constitution. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, disagreements, and conflicts, but there was also something that had never existed before: the right to disagree without being destroyed for it. Engineer Yoon Jae-min, now old and gray, worked with alien scientists to share technology freely across all species. The weapons he had once built to fight the Empire were converted into tools for exploration and discovery. We could have become conquerors ourselves, he said to his mixed species research team. We had the power. But humans didn't fight for power. We fought for the right to be free. All of us. Colonel Bae Yu-jin, now a general, trained the Federation's peacekeeping forces. They were drawn from every species and taught one fundamental principle. Their job was to protect freedom, not to impose order. The Empire fell because it tried to make everyone the same, she told her diverse recruits. We survive because we're all different. Your differences aren't weaknesses to overcome. They're strengths to celebrate. On Earth, a monument was built to remember those who had died in the war. It listed names from every species that had fought for freedom. Human names like Lee Dae-ho and Choi Min-ah stood beside alien names that humans could barely pronounce. But the monument's inscription was simple enough for any species to understand.